Hi, welcome to Collab365 Global Conference, and welcome to my session. It's Office 365 Multi-Factor Authentication with Microsoft Azure Active Directory Premium. My name is Nuno Arias Silva. I work for GFI Portugal. I have more than 18 years working on IT with master in information technologies, and last projects have more focus on Office 365, Microsoft infrastructures and security within Microsoft infrastructure products and Azure too. I'm MVP of Office 365, and below are my contacts. You can email me, you can Twitter, you can go to Facebook or LinkedIn. Here is the agenda. You will learn about multi-factor authentication for Office 365, Office client features with multi-factor authentication, and then Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication. Just to introduce the difference about the identities of Microsoft Cloud Services. You have two identities. Microsoft accounts, that's the account that you sign in OneDrive, in Cheesebox, or Outlook.com. For example, your email address at Outlook.com, that's the Microsoft account. Then you have Microsoft Azure Active Directory that resides other services like Office 365, Windows Intune, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and others. It could be the same email address, but it's different cloud services. To introduce the Office 365 identity models, you have three identity models: Office 365 Cloud Identity, Office 365 Synchronized Identity, and Office 365 Federated Identity. On the first one, within just Cloud Identity, you don't need any services running on any servers on premise. You just have the identity of the users on the Azure Active Directory that is based on the identity of Office 365. The second one, with synchronized identity, the source of authority, it's your on-premise Active Directory. Your identity, it's synchronized to Azure Active Directory, there where it resides Office 365. And you can also synchronize password to the Azure Active Directory to use the same credentials that you use on-premise. The third one, it's the federated identity. You have your Active Directory. You will need directory sync 2. Then you have federated services to authenticate your users, and that service is it's Active Directory Federation services that will need to be on your on-premise services, or you can put an hybrid cloud solution with Azure and put some those services on Azure too as a service. Now we are going to see the multi-factor authentication for Office 365 to drill down how you can use Office 365 using a better authentication and reach some that your business needs. What is multi-factor authentication? It's multiple factors that are required for signing on the services. You can have familiar to customer cloud service, such as Microsoft account, as simple block password compromised from another country. You can address regulatory compliance and high risk scenario. You can have ACA two-factor, two-form factor, multi-factor, and strong authentication. With two or more of the following factors, for example, something you know, a password or PIN, something you have, a phone, credit card or hardware token, or something you are, a fingerprint, and geometry, retinal scan, or other biometrics. Stronger when using two different channels. The types of multi-factor authentication, it could be hardware OTP tokens, certificates, smart cards, phone-based authentication, phone call, text message, and push. And you can also have software OTP tokens. What is multi-factor authentication? Based on Azure and Office 365, it's powered by PhoneFactor that was acquired by Microsoft in 2012. It's trusted by thousands of enterprises to authenticate employee, customers, and partner access. It secures applications and identities in the cloud and on premises. And now it's included with Office 365. Multi-factor authentication for Office 365. It was announced about a year ago, the multi-factor authentication for Office 365. It's included in all licenses for signing users with no additional cost except small business and dedicated signing users. You could extend what is currently available for tenants admins because before it was released to all this kind of licenses, only admins could have this kind of service. Admins can now enable all sign-in users for multi-factor authentication, but it does not replace Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication. The enterprise authentication using any phone. For example, you have mobile apps, you can push a notification, one-time password, it's OTP token. You can answer phone calls, out-of-band call. You can have text message, one-time password by text. These are three kinds that you can use to identify yourself with multi-factor authentication within Microsoft services. Here is an example of the additional security verification. The default, you can choose to notify us with the apps or call my mobile phone, text code, my office phone, or show one-time code in app. You can then select what is your mobile phone, your office phone, an alternative mobile phone, and then you can set up your mobile app, multi-factor authentication app. You can configure it and you can manage all of these within your portal of the user. And for example, if you have some uh, applications that will need to authenticate and you have multi-factor authentication enabled, it's the app passwords tab. You can, for example, name it Word and Excel, and you can have this password, and you can put this password in these programs. For example, you can have up to 40, you name it, and then always that application is based on that app password. For example, if you have a tablet, you can put app passwords, you can name it tablet, and if it is stolen, you can delete those uh, app passwords based on the name you have identified, and no other multi-factor and app passwords are affected. You don't have to reset all the passwords. Just delete those. And there are specific scenarios too. For example, federated users, Office 365 resources just need multi-factor authentication for Office 365. You can use Azure multi-factor authentication server for other ADFS connected applications. You can have hybrid on-premise server applications that requires multi-factor authentication server. For example, MC Link on-premise and Exchange Online. And you can have PowerShell too. You can create a service account, which is an administrator and control access. But you can have those kind of scenarios. Now we will see Office client features with multi-factor authentication. Office client multi-factor authentication features. With the updated Office 2013 clients, you can support multi-factor authentication and new Office that has released past months. No need add passwords in updated clients. You can authenticate in a web browser than you can authenticate in Office clients. Outlook, Skype for Business, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PowerShell, and OneDrive for Business. Clients will also support federation identity providers using SAML protocol, US DoD Common Access Card, CAC, and US Federal Personal Identity Verification Card, PIV. With Office Client Multi-Factor Authentication, it's built on top of Active Directory Authentication Library, ADAL. ADAL implements simple all-out protocol that Azure Active Directory and ADFS 3.0 understand. Office does allow to those endpoints. Those endpoints implement a number of protocols with other IDPS, some P20 and WSPAD. AAD and ADFS issue allows tokens based on the results that Office uses against its workloads. And now we are going to see the multi-factor authentication flow. At the first step, Office makes a request to a service which supports the multi-factor authentication flow. Then, service instructs Office to visit an STS which speaks a simple standard-based protocol, OAuth. Then, Office instructs AD library to launch web browser control. It redirects and opens a prompt window so you can put your credentials. Then multi-factor and federation magic happens, transparent to Office. Federation payment and Azure Active Directory. The federation sign in using some key, WSPAD, etc. Then the Office gets back the simple tokens that it catches for future communication with its services. And then Office sends token to the service. After that, you are connected to Office 365 using multi-factor authentication. And now we're gonna see Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication, the different kind of authentication based on other services. Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication. Do I need multi-factor authentication for Office 365 or Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication? The difference, it could be, for example, with multi-factor authentication for Office 365 that is included in the licenses, you can secure Office 365 resources for any user. The multi-factor authentication for Azure administration, it's included in Microsoft Azure subscription. It secures Azure resources for admins. And Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication, it's an advanced multi-factor authentication features for Office 365 and Azure subscriptions. You can have Office 365 hybrid architectures, including on-premise services. It secures resources for multiple software as a service apps. It secures resources that spans on-premises and cloud, including VPN and line of business applications. It includes a multi-factor authentication server that you can install on-premises, SDKs, and Azure multi-factor authentication portal that requires an Azure subscription. You have to have a subscription of Azure. You can use Office 365 with Azure multi-factor authentication. You can require a link from Microsoft Azure subscription to the Office 365 tenant. You can have multi-factor for Office 365 does not reduce Microsoft Azure multi-factor subscription costs. Here we are going to see the multi-factor authentication for Office 365 compared to Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication. For example, with Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication, we can have all these features compared to multi-factor authentication for Office 365 that has just 7. For example, within your needs, if you need IP whitelist that's relevant in public preview, you'll need Azure multi-factor authentication. If you need custom greetings, fraud alert, event confirmation, security reports, to lock and unblock users, one-time bypass, customize caller ID for authentication phone calls, multi-factor authentication server for on-premise applications, and SDK for multi-factor authentication for customer apps. That features you will need Microsoft Azure multi-factor authentication. If you just need that administrators can enable or enforce multi-factor authentication to end users, use mobile apps, OTP, and online as second authentication factor, phone call as second authentication factor, SMS, add passwords, the default greetings, and remember me. You can see all these on product based of Office 365 multi-factor authentication. It always depends what your business needs of this. Here is the authentication process of Azure multi-factor authentication. Users sign in from any device using their existing username and password. Then users must also authenticate using their phone or mobile device before access is granted. You can connect on-premises apps that use LDAP, IES, RDS, VDIs. You must install a multi-factor authentication server on-premise if you want on-premise, and Windows Server AD or other LDAP server. Multi-factor authentication server can reach all that you need. And how to enable. You can enable to create multi-factor authentication provider. Just sign in Windows Azure Management Portal and go to Active Directory, multi-factor authentication providers. Then create a new provider by providing a name, usage model for billing, and link it to your directory unless being used for on-premises application only. You can go to the portal, you can select the name you want of your company or applications and just enable. And how to manage. You can have many Active Directory providers. You can select them and configure based on your services. You can configure the block users, one-time password. You can see your reports, usage, server status, to see the blocked users history, You can see fraud alert, queue it, and then you can configure all settings. You can see some change requests from the user, and then you can configure some settings like greeting, the password, and the times for them. In summary, Office 365 licenses is included multi-factor authentication. Users are enabled and then enforced. Users can create passwords for clients' apps with Office 2013 clients that are updated, and the new Office that has released last month. Office 365 tenants can be connected to Azure, and Azure multi-factor authentication as additional feature. Here is the updated authentication that are available now. The ADAL-based authentication. The ADAL-based authentication stacks enables the Office 2013 and 2016 clients to engage in browser-based authentication, also known as passive authentication, where the user is directed to a web page from the identity provider to authenticate it. The above screenshot shows the default web page from Azure Active Directory, which is used by Office 365. You have here some support links: Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, securing access to cloud services, information for administrators, Azure Active Directory editions, the comparison of all editions, and how to set up the multi-factor authentication. If you have any questions, you can reach me on Twitter, on my email, and you can see my blog to reach to some news of Office 365 and Azure too. And thank you all for watching of Collab365 events. Thank you. Stay tuned for more great sessions. You can reach these 2 days of Collab Office 365 events. You can reach all kind of sessions of Azure, of Office 365, and many others. Thanks.